On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I discuss the recent New York Times article and how really the sausage is made. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson. In today's tough real estate market, keeping buyers motivated and loyal is key. Now is the time to leverage the power of One Home by CoreLogic and the best-in-class data and client collaboration experience it brings. Seamlessly integrated into Matrix, One Home delivers unbeatable engagement and one of the highest customer satisfaction scores amongst the top 10 national real estate portals. More impressively, One Home leads the pack by keeping users coming back with the highest repeat visits. With One Home's invite-only access, agents can provide their clients a truly exceptional experience. Don't forget to remind your MLS members to try this great value-added benefit. If your MLS hasn't added One Home yet, please reach out to your CoreLogic rep. Thanks again to CoreLogic for sponsoring the Industry Relations podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your co-host, the Notorious Rob. And as always, my co-host, the fabulous Greg Robertson. Ah!
Just got the fresh cut here.
Yeah, looking good, man. Looking sharp.
You know, so look at this, right? Just kind of get all the gray out.
Dude, ain't you older than me? How the fuck do you not have any gray?
Hold on. How old are you, actually? I don't know how
53.
old you are. God, yeah, I'm 57. Man, you're a young buck. When did you graduate high school? Yeah, no, it's listen. Yeah,
you're making me look old.
So, what year did you graduate high school?
89.
89. God, no wonder you're into that funky shit. Okay, well, now that's all making sense right now.
And here I am thinking I screwed up for cussing too early because Cole told us not to cuss too early. But here we are, just dropping F-bombs casually. Because, you know, age. So before we get to the topic, speaking of age, I had this realization the other day. And I think some of our listeners are also Gen X, so I think they would appreciate this. Okay. So 2024 to 1984, right? Where I remember 1984. I was, eighth grade, right? You were probably, high school?
Yep.
Okay. So 2024 to 1984 is the same as 1984 to 1944.
God, that's crazy.
But what that means is musically.
Yeah.
Right? I remember being in high school, like in the 80s, and you know the oldies station would come on?
Yeah.
And they would be playing, the Beatles. They would be playing the music of the 60s.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right? They weren't playing the music of the 40s.
Pardon me, Roy, is that the cat? Yeah, no.
But you know what I mean? They weren't playing like the big band music from the 40s because the music was so completely different.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
So when I think oldies, I think 60s, which is only 20 years. So when kids today are thinking about the music of the 80s, that's almost the same as if we in high school were thinking about the music of the 40s.
Yeah, but...
Dude, it's insane how old we are.
80s music, though, is so cool, so it's all good.
Yeah, anyway. So what are we talking about? I know what we're talking about.
That was a little bit, that was a little bit meta right there, because that's exactly how we get on. And you say to me before we start recording, what are we talking about today? That's the preparation that you're getting here. Every dollar that you pay for is
that's
that
right.
kind of preparation.
Well, which is why we should be doing more live streams, you know. Yeah. And since we're on a new platform, I think we're going to start doing that.
Yeah, no, we have some announcements later, so yeah.
Yes. But as we talked about, there are a lot of things going on, but I do think it's time to maybe touch on the apparent war that New York Times has declared on the National Association of Realtors with the latest. So why don't you get us into it?
I mean, what I've, of course, because we always talk about stuff like this, and you're always talk about how NAR is woke as F.
Yes.
Oh, NAR is so woke. They're so DEI, and they're so blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And, well, hey, it turns out where NAR, they put their money where their mouth is, and the money is going to conservative groups. And, there's a little bit of discretion or I don't know if it's like, how did they put it? It was, there's something that's like awareness versus understanding. Right. Okay. NAR says that they're very transparent about, who they give money to.
Right.
And they cited some different things. But a lot of realtors that the author of this New York Times article, Deborah Kamen, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Says that, they had no idea, right? So I guess the gist of the story is that there was some money that was being funneled to a very conservative, and I don't know if it was a PAC or, I don't know the whole terms of what the difference between a PAC and a fund or whatever else, but that everybody kind of was surprised by, including yourself. I think I remember your Twitter thing, that you were very surprised that they were giving money to such an organization, right? And they quickly, though, the Times reporter quickly issued some sort of correction on the article that it was actually going to this other super PAC or PAC, again, I'm not sure what the terms are, called Opportunity Matters. Was that it, or something that is?
So basically, American Property Owners Alliance, APOA, right?
Right.
That was the organization that New York Times just kind of, zeroed in on. So about 5 years ago, NAR quietly created an affiliate nonprofit called the American Property Owners Alliance, and its spending tells a different story. While the PAC plays it down the middle, the American Property Owners Alliance appears to have taken a side. That's really the claim, right? And this APOA have distributed $12.8 million in grants. Nearly $10 million went to groups with conservative agendas, many of them aligned with Republican super PACs. That's going to be the thing, right? That's the controversy. Now, so the first threshold question is, NAR has released, almost instantly, a response, right? On the website. And I think the industry press covered it, then they're just going point by point, right? And have responded. So there is something to be said that maybe the New York Times is not, being fully truthful.
Well, I don't know if truthful is the right word. I don't know if you just read this, but I just got an email from, I think it was Real Estate News, where they actually interviewed Deborah Kamen about this. Yeah. And where she had basically made the thing of hey, listen, we've been working on this story since January. Yeah. We're interested in knowing what happened before the lawsuit, and interested in knowing what was going to happen with all this stuff. It was very hard to get any real numbers from as far as financial data about NAR, because they're a public, but they also have some for-profit divisions. Yep. And unlike a lot of other trade organizations, you have to be a member of NAR. Members are, as she says, forced to become a member because of the MLS access, right? Yes. So they think this is and because real estate is such a big part of our gross domestic product, they felt that the coverage of this is warranted, because a lot of people think, there's an axe to grind there, sure. And the Times seems to think it's worthy of their attention because of the things that I've kind of mentioned, right? So, but it does seem to be just a hit piece after hit piece after hit piece. Mm-hmm. Now this one, so I read the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, so they have to put some money here to get that money there, and they have to put some money here to get that money over there, right? And so part of me was kind of thinking, and maybe people will kind of chastise me for this, but it's isn't that how the game works? Isn't all this kind of shuffling and moving money here for this company to put it out over there? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just lobbying, right? That's just advocate. I don't think the sausage is nobody wants to see how that sausage is made, right? But that's kind of the game, right? So, I mean, in a sense, isn't NAR just doing their job? They're trying to get their agenda out there, and that agenda has to go towards, a liberal and progressive folks, and also conservative folks, right? Sure. And especially the way that things are turning out now with the election and over. I mean, yeah. So they're giving more money to conservative people. Well, the conservatives just, took over everything. The administration, the Senate, and the House. I mean, all the House, right? So the House of Representatives. I mean, so. I don't want to say big whoop, right? But I mean, on one level, it's like, okay, so yeah, they're doing their job, and this job, politics is not pretty, and it's not savory, it's not anything. Right. It's just that's CODB, and if you're in politics, yeah, shit like this happens. And now you could argue whether or not this was done correctly as far as. And NAR says, no, we've let people know that this is happening. There's this, and this goes back to kind of our conversations with Sam in a way, right? We're like, NAR puts this stuff out, but does anybody read it, right? Does anybody care? And if that's the case, does it matter, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of conflicted in those types of things. So many things to touch on. I'm just trying to think what the most relevant would be. So starting off at the outset, like, you're kind of how you opened this, like, that I call NAR woke, and look you over here, NAR is giving a ton of money to Republicans. Yeah. Okay. I think my response to that would be NAR is woke because ideologically that's what they've become over the years since 2020. But really the problem with NAR is that it's establishment. And the Republicans that it's giving to, I doubt is like the Trump campaign and the MAGA crowd. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at all of their donations. But the fact of the matter is this notion of Democrat, Republican, like that's no longer valid. And we talked about this, Like there's no one on the right, if you will, who thinks Mitch McConnell is some sort of a, conservative icon, right? And again, people like me who are sort of fighting against all this nonsense, we look at the Uniparty, right? Like Mitch McConnell, who's that guy out of South Carolina? Lindsey Graham, these fucking warmongering, fat cats. Like they're the same, they're the same. So the fact that APOA, which is a controlled organization, is giving money to, some, like, I don't care. It's all still establishment, right? And the establishment, unfortunately, has been woke for a good number of years, right? Yeah, so you're just kind of, just pardon me, but no,
it's just true.
You're just dismissing millions of dollars being sent to a conservative group, but that's just part of their woke agenda. That doesn't make any damn sense.
Like, what makes them conservative? We could look some of them up, I guess. I'm just telling you, like, it's all like, establishment Republicans, like that's not conservative.
So you're gonna argue. So yeah, I love this. This is so. So you're just going to change the rules of the game right now by saying, I was actually, Greg, I was right because I wouldn't really I'm going to change the definition, or I'm going to give my own definition of what conservative is, and they don't meet my definition, so therefore NAR still.
Okay, what's your definition?
Well, the New York Times called them all conservative groups. I guess I'm stupid for listening, and you're going to probably say yes, that like you shouldn't listen to what the New York Times labels somebody.
It's not. So you just conservative is whatever the New York Times says is conservative. That's your definition.
No, I think I haven't delved into like what candidates they gave them to, whatever. But
sure, I'm agreeing. I don't know. So all I was pointing out was just because they gave them to Republican aligned PACs or whatever, it doesn't mean that they were.
Yeah, but I somehow think if they gave them to liberal congressmen or whatever, you'd be touting absolutely that's a liberal organization. Blah 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 blah.
No, again, it's just like liberal versus it's all nonsense now. It's like, did you give for establishment or not? And NAR has and to your point, so that goes to the next part. NAR's job, if you want to think about it, is lobbying. Okay, you typically don't win by lobbying the losers. You got to lobby winners, which means establishment, right? That's just the nature of the lobbying game, right? It's very rare you're going to find like a lobbyist, go out of their way to support like some dark horse outsider candidate. Do you know what I mean? Like that just isn't done.
Yeah, right? I know. Let me push back a little bit on that, right? Okay. Because we all know things flip and flop, right?
Yeah.
My opinion is that the incoming administrators have made so many promises to the American people. There's no way that they can really deliver on a lot of those things, right? He's already kind of whiffled back about, I don't think groceries prices are coming down, right? When it comes to the midterms, we may see, and as we do see this in a lot of presidential elections, 2 years later, the whole house flips, right? So that might happen. So if I'm a lobbyist, yes, I am favoring who's in power now, but I'm also remembering on the way down, I don't want to step on too many people. I want to make sure that I have court a little favor with both. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah, I'm not. Look, I fundamentally don't think like NAR and APOA or whatever they're Republican or Democrat. I sort of don't. They're not like teachers unions, which is like a Democrat Party appendage. I don't see it that way. All I'm saying is that they are establishment appendage. So one of the examples I'll give you, I remember having this conversation. Oh God, it must be 10 years ago now. I did some work for TAR back in the day. Texas Association of Realtors, right?
Yeah.
And I did some work for Tree PAC specifically, the Texas Realtor PAC.
Right.
And one of the things I pointed out was I think Tree PAC said that they had a win rate of like 97%, meaning candidates that Tree PAC supported, 97% of them won the race, right? But then I went and like looked at the underlying data, right? And I'm like, half of these people didn't have anyone running against them.
Good bet.
Right? That's a pretty good bet, right? The other half, when they won by such giant margins that the realtor vote did not matter. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, say you had 500 realtors in your district, right? And you won by 35,000 votes. Whether realtors voted for you or not did not matter, right? So it wasn't about the realtor vote. It was just essentially a payoff. It was, political contribution because that guy's going to win, right? And
right, saying, but I mean, so again, I think that's a strategy, right?
Right, and my point is like,
right.
That's what you do, right, when you are trying to influence politicians. That's just a game. To your point, it's dirty. Like, it is what happens. If you want to be able to get in and have a conversation with a congressman, with a city councilman, you're going to give him money, knowing he's going to win, right, that he doesn't need it, so that you can get access. Like, that's just whatever. And you can call it legal bribery. You can call it whatever you want, but that's just a game, right? So I don't have a real problem with that. This notion, like, where I do have a question, a set of questions, is why did NAR feel like they needed to create this APOA to funnel money, whether it's to Republicans and Democrats or equally to both or whatever? Why did they feel they had to create this other thing? That would be my question. I mean, it's not like RPAC doesn't exist, right? It's not like NAR doesn't already do an enormous amount. Like, NAR is a top 5 heavy hitter lobbyist in DC. So why did they feel like they need to create this separate organization?
I think
that's the question.
Yeah, that's what I go back to is that, it's like these are. I mean, if you're a lobbyist, if you're in this game, if you're playing the Washington game, right? There are rules and things that you and I don't understand, but they have a francolingua. They have a process. They have a culture that us from the outside look back, look in and go, well, that's weird. Why did they have to do that? But I'm sure somebody who's who's familiar with the game will tell you, oh, that does look weird, but let me tell you why it's better to start an organization and do it this way, because it might be for tax reasons. It might be for, I think that they're not doing it just because, they're doing it for a reason. And just because we can't figure out that reason right now, and just because, like, I think about it like when I talk to new vendors and they go, okay, we're going to make this app for real estate. And they go, where do I get the API? Well, there's no API for real estate today. What do you mean? That's the stupidest thing in the world. Well, I mean, and then I explained it to him, and it sounds fucking stupid. It sounds really stupid, but that's the way it is in our industry. We understand that. We have to kind of tell outsiders how it works. It sometimes doesn't make any sense, but that's the way it is. Same thing, I think, with this type of stuff, right? Why do you have to start another organization? Why do you have to do this? I'm sure that somebody's going to could tell us what the game is. It might sound stupid to us, but that's just the way it is in that kind of lobbying industry.
Here's my point. My point is they haven't done so yet.
But I don't think even if they did so, we'd probably go, well, that's the stupidest thing in the world. So, even though, just like me telling a vendor, a new developer, that there's no API for real estate data for the country.
Yeah, but we could tell them why.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it sounds insane when I tell them. And I'm
I
sure
know.
if they told us, it'd probably sound insane.
I don't
But
think
that doesn't
so.
mean that's the way it is.
Look, again, I'm not condemning. I'm saying I have a question. Now, I do actually have a little bit of insight into this because I think APOA was launched like 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, I wasn't nearly as hated by NAR as I am today, right? And like I know Bill Malkasian, he's a really nice guy, he's really great, and he's a political powerhouse. He's one of these guys.
Well, they're denying that it was based upon that Wisconsin thing. They're denying that NAR is.
Okay, well, NAR's PR is like one of the worst things I've ever seen. Talk about lack of transparency. Here's what I'll say. I will say I've been in conversations roughly 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, where we talked about the need for NAR to go beyond real estate agents. That because it was like the real estate agent thing, like sure we could pay people off, but there were two reasons for it. One was the market for NAR is very limited, right? Like you can't become a realtor if you're not a licensee, right? Mm-hmm. And from a lobbying standpoint, say you go to a congressman and say, hey, look, I represent whatever, right? The Chicago Associated Realtors, 17,000 members, whatever. Yeah, but that's just 17,000. But what would be even better is you could go and say, we represent 2 million homeowners.
But hold on,
right.
Time out. So in the grand scheme of things, right, they are the largest traders organization
No question.
in the world.
No
Okay,
question.
so
yes.
So I mean, I don't. So that's not big enough.
It's not big
right?
enough.
They can't. Where else are they going to go? They're not going to go to any other trade organization that has as many members, right? I mean,
who's that they? What are you talking about?
I mean, you're saying that they. I'm
talking about when you go talk to a congressman or a city councilman,
and you say I represent the largest trade organization in the world. That's not enough. You're saying.
I mean, here's the thing: realtors get their asses kicked by unions all the time because unions have more members.
Okay, so largest trade organization versus union. I don't know.
1.5 million realtors, like 7 million teachers. It's just a numbers game, right? So when you're talking about votes or like volunteers,
yeah.
Right?
I guess sure, okay.
Unions kick realtors' ass all the time, right? So I'm just saying 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was much more involved with the NAR leadership, and we would have these conversations. One of the things that came up was, what we really should do is somehow figure out a way for non-licensees, non-agents to be able to join NAR. Right? And from a political standpoint, if we could create a movement where homeowners, right, could come together and become a political force, that would be even more powerful. Because sure, you only have 1.5 million realtors, but there are like 40 million homeowners. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of the thought process around, was it House Logic, right? They wanted to create a site that would be empowering to homeowners, and then if they got enough people to sign up, if there was some legislation, they could...
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. House Logic, and I think APOA and a lot of these efforts came out of that conversation, right? So the challenge and the question then becomes this. And so I'm like, look, and I think that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. Do you? Right? For NAR to be like, what we need? We need to create a movement to organize homeowners.
To further their influence. I think that's their job, right?
That's right.
They got to find a way to win.
I have no issue with that. Right. So I suppose the only two things is I'm on the American Property Owner Alliance site right now. The fact that it really is an NAR subsidiary, right? They're
the sole donor or something. Right?
Kind of, right. And then there's all this like disputation. I'm just like looking at like the executive director, Colin Allen, American Property Owners, current executive, came to the job from NAR, right? So, like NAR took one of its staffers and like put them at APOA, right? It's clear that like who's on the board of APOA, right?
They're the sole. They want to make sure their money's spent the way they want it.
Right, and they're allocating like $6 million to it. So in other words, my concern then becomes, all right, it's one thing for NAR to say, let's seed this, right, and then get it going, right? They didn't do that. It's effective their subsidiary, but they don't really disclose that either. It's not like American Property Owners Alliance, a NAR affiliate. It doesn't mention that, right? it's a little bit too astroturfy, I guess is my thing.
Well,
about that.
I think if you look at any other industry, I bet that's the way it is. That's the way this whole thing is done.
Sure.
But it's a little, and again, this is probably the way it's done also, which is a little bit gets to me is, and she's mentioned this in various articles, but this last one, it's like, there's some dude that's getting like $250,000 a year as a past president or some shit, right? It's like, why are you paying this guy $250,000?
Yeah.
I guess he's either he has the phone number to the Fed chair that picks up or he's got some dirt on somebody, right? I mean, that's why I would think he's getting paid that much.
Right.
So that seems to me, rather than like they're not disclosing who exactly they are, I'm sure they could say, "Hey, go to my 990 and you can see whoever who we are." But
like I said, so all I'm saying is it's a little astroturfy, and you're right. Other industries do this as well. I'm not saying they don't. And politics is a dirty game. It is what it is. I'm not condemning NAR here. Right? I'm really not. Like, the New York Times wants to crucify NAR. I'm like, yeah, but it's a political organization. They've done this. What I'm suggesting though is what my questions really don't have to do with that. My questions have to do with, if I vaguely remember, originally the idea was let's seed it, right, and then get the homeowners actually involved. In other words, if APOA's budget, right, was not coming from NAR, but was coming from $10 donations, membership dues from homeowners, would any of us have a real problem with it? I don't think so. Do you see what I mean?
yeah, but I think like that. I mean, if I remember, that House Logic thing was started 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? I mean, it's
No, the original one was the revamp that they launched was all about lobbying, right? About 5 years ago, there was this huge spate of efforts within NAR, within the industry, to try and get advocacy going more, and that's an effort that I really support, actually, right? Right. All I'm really getting at is, American Property Owners Alliance, does it have any members? Right. So if you go on their website, I'm just wondering, is there? All right, here's a join us. Okay, join the millions of people. I'm a homeowner, renter, housing provider. That's all it says, right? And it's just in here. In fact, I share it. We could look at it, right? Because now that we have this new system, new platform, look at this. This is American Property Owners Alliance, and all it's asking is first name, last name, email, zip. So it's just trying to compile an email list. This is not a membership. This is not members. And then it says right here, join the millions of people. Who are the millions of people? Right?
I'm sure.
Who are the millions of people?
Yeah, I mean, it's copy, sure.
It's just copy. That's my point. In other words, what NAR could have done, should have done when they launched this thing. It's okay, like, we'll seed this, right? Here's 5 million seed funding. Go make this happen. And then it essentially becomes an activist organization, goes out to the neighborhoods and tries to get homeowners to actually sign up, actually support this, and actually start donating $10 or $30 a year or whatever membership fee. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you had done that 5 years later, today, NAR is not writing big checks. They're not allocating $6-7 million. They're not just using it as a vehicle for funneling dark money to PACs. It becomes its own thing. With, NAR helps start, and maybe NAR has a big board, NAR is the biggest donor. That's fine. But where there is this independent base of power, that there is this independent group of homeowners who actually have been energized, who actually come together and create this, that would have been a very different story.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but again, I think this is just SOP, man. I mean,
sure.
they gin up a company,
Sure.
they give it a fancy name, and what they're really selling, what they really have behind them is $6 million. And they go to the Congress people, they go to the whoever else, and they say, "Hey, I'm with the American Property Owners Alliance,
Right.
and we're interested in A, B, C, D, and E, which
That's
is
right.
which is the cue card that they got from NAR, right?
That's
okay."
right.
And, we would love to, we're supporting candidates that support these kind of things.
Sure.
Are you for A, B, C, and D? You are? Okay, great. Get them a check for $50,000.
That's
Next.
right.
I mean,
That's right.
yeah, it would be nice to get 50 million homeowners, but that's a fucking tough thing to do. Man. I mean, that's
agreed. It's very hard. I'm not Yeah, and I'm agreeing with everything he said. Like, yeah, this is the way the politics played. It's a standard dark money political funneling game. Like, okay, right? Like, again, I'm not condemning NAR here. Like, okay, I mean, this is what you chose to do. You know, people are gonna get all bent out of shape because it's giving more to Republicans and whatever. Okay, whatever. You know, like that's a whole separate thing. And the New York Times wants to make this be like some sort of giant, scandal. Like, all right, I mean, I guess we know the New York Times hates NAR and wants to get rid of it. Like, okay. At the end of the day, it's just, to your point, it's just politics as usual. It's, funneling dark money to various PACs who then, forward it on. All right.
Okay, so in your mind, though, is this a nothing burger, or is this something that the industry, I mean, because you say you were shocked, right? You were shocked about this. I mean, but what is this on the grand scale of, what's going on with organized real estate right now? I'm saying this one bit of news, not the campaign, obviously.
Yeah. This one bit of
New York
news.
Times
I mean, it's a bit of a nothing burger, I think, a little bit, but it could be important in the following sense, right? I've been saying forever that 70-80% of realtors are not members at all, right? They're just hostages who join because they have to in order to get MLS or forms or lockboxes, right? But the remaining 15, 20, 30%, whatever that I like to call the realtor junkies, right? To people who are really into it. Let's just say half of them are conservative and half of them are liberals, right? However you want to define that, right? Or fine, half of them vote Republican, half of them vote Democrat, right? This article would piss off the half that vote Democrat.
Yeah, sure.
No question about it. And it actually was interviews and named some of them, right? Walt Whittock, I remember him, or who's the Tony Mancuso, immediate past president of the Washington, D.C. Associated of Realtors. Well, Washington, D.C. went 98% for Kamala. So, I think we could understand what his politics is. Those people are going to get pissed, no question. So the damage that this article does is the conservative half, people who vote Republicans, already are pissed off about NAR because they just went woke and started, persecuting Christians and conservatives, and they've embraced DEI until blue in the face. Like, okay, they're already pissed and annoyed at NAR. The left and the liberals were like, yeah, but go NAR, protecting trans rights, whatever it is. That half is now get pissed because of this article. That half now feels like, you've been telling us all this shit, right? All this woke stuff, right? To make it seem like you cared about, whatever, equity and diversity and trans rights or whatever. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, you're funneling tens of millions of dollars to, Mitch McConnell and, these scumbag fascists. It damages from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, somebody should do this, but I mean, NAR, if they really had some sort of give a shit attitude, it's like, listen, this is how the sausage is made, people. Shut up.
Yeah.
Right? It reminds me of, somebody should do a meme of Jack Nicklaus from A Few Good Men. Mm-hmm. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. I would rather you just, instead of complaining about this and that, just say thank you and let me do my job, right? I mean, somebody should do like a mock-up, a meme of their membership going after NAR, and NAR is like, you're goddamn right, I gave that money to the APAC.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, maybe that's the way about it.
I don't know. I still, the one thing I just can't get off and get over, or maybe I can, I don't know. It's just all the people that get all this. I mean, I want that gig. Hey, I'm going to become chairman emeritus, or I'm going to be a consultant for you for 5 years,
right?
At $500,000 and a $10,000 a month travel allowance,
right?
And hey, where do I sign up for that club? Right?
Well, I mean, why do you think all these people are so desperate to become president of NAR and climb the ladder and get gigs, get jobs there? I mean, When you're at the top echelon of the insiders, man, that's what you get.
Well, yeah, okay, we're in the wrong place. We are insiders, but what path do we have to get onto that insider
You
path?
just got to sell your soul. That's all it is, right?
Okay,
I'm
so
not willing to do that.
what's the price?
And it's right. It's not just NAR. I just want to point something out here, right? Because everyone thinks I hate NAR. It's like I love NAR. I just hate current leadership and some of this corruption. I do want to point out this isn't just NAR, right? A lot of the bigger nonprofits have this exact problem.
No, all of them do. Yeah.
Right. I mean, think about the NRA, the same three letters, right? I mean, the NRA got Letitia James went after them, and then all this disclosure, like, holy shit, the corruption. Oh my God. Yeah. And then these like fake jobs and payoffs and all this stuff. Like, so I'm not. And NRA, by the way, is a conservative Republican organization, right? Like,
yeah.
So this isn't a political left-right bullshit thing. I'm just saying, like, yeah, this is the way the game is played. Yes, NAR is going to have some corruption because every other organization of some size is going to run into that, right? I mean, thing is, like, there's a part where you have to go, we shouldn't accept that, right? Like, even if we sort of understand, it's like, okay, yes, that happens. I don't know that means that we should just stand by and be like, so therefore we should just be cool with it. I don't believe that, right?
Yeah, but you do wish that you would stand above all the other ones, right? That you do it right. I mean, and like sure. you say that a lot of people think that you're anti-NAR and everything else, but man, I mean, since this stuff is coming out, I mean, more Main Street people are asking questions, right? They're like. And I'm like, well, this sounds like what, they always get pissed off at Rob, but, there's some other people out there right now asking the same questions you are
right.
And saying, it was the DOJ is being, whatever. The jury didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
All this blame,
right.
They just still don't. And again, this is another kind of a thing. Well, that's the way the game is played, or whatever the arguments are. Nobody from, it seems, from leadership there really takes any sort of like, any sort of like blame or responsibility or anything, right? And it's just it's kind of sad to see.
That's my point. Like, even if we understand that yes, that is the way the sausage is made, right? Yes, these are the games you got to play in order to do political lobbying at the big boy level. Fine. Even if you accept all that, I mean, I think there's a reason why this stuff isn't like trumpeted, right? It's not promoted everywhere. Why it's being kept secret? Why it's kind of hidden, right? Because it's embarrassing. It's not a good look. And it is going to cause political problems for NAR when some of these things leak out. Okay. I'm trying to figure out where I want to take this, like, because there are a couple of important things we can talk about here. Okay. The one important thing is, so let's start with this. Here's what I believe. I think whether you are left, right, center, whatever, right? I can't think of any person, any genuine realtor person anywhere who thinks that corruption is a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could be all for trans rights, but that doesn't mean you're for corruption, right? Like, you could be all for, I bleed blue and, realtor gold, forever, and I'm a major donor and be all into it, and still think that, when the CEO of the MLS is going on foreign trips and buying $70,000 worth of luxury goods and not declaring it, that's a problem, right? I think you could be... I'm all about realtors and still think there's something effing weird when the installation party costs $250,000 as it did in Las Vegas. To me, that is not a partisan issue. That is I don't know what that is. That is how about we just not have corruption issue? And I don't think anyone would disagree with that, right? So one thing that maybe, look, let's put it this way. I think it's there is something to be said for why is it that whenever there's an investigation that unveils corruption and problems, it's always the outside media. Why can't the industry press do that?
I don't think I agree with that. I think that Andrea over at Inman has broken some stories.
Name
in the past.
Name one. Name one major corruption story that industry press.
I don't know if I would call it corruption, but I would say it definitely shone a light on. It's like years ago on the RPR stuff of how much money was being spent there. That was a big thing about how much their funding was and what their budget was and usage and all that. I mean, that was a big story at the time for sure.
It wasn't that, and again, that's a policy issue, like whether we should spend that money. I'm talking about corruption.
But
I'm talking about corruption.
Corruption. I mean,
I'm talking about, hey, here's a local association president who's spending $400,000 a year on personal bodyguards.
Right. Well, I'm not sure who broke that story.
It broke because Nevada Current. It was local press here, right? And then that led to like some of the people who know to start making things like YouTube videos. I'm just saying, like, dude, like what? So one of the things there is, hey, you know what? The industry press, y'all should maybe think about doing an investigative wing, right? Like, because if you're not just a mouthpiece of the advertisers, then as journalists, like maybe it doesn't hurt for you guys to dig up some of this stuff and let your readers, let the community know. Because again, no one, I'm telling you this, there is no one, left, right, love realtor, hate realtor, MLS, like there is no one who's like for corruption. No one. Right? So like if Riz Media uncovers some major corruption scandal in some local association somewhere, not one of their readers is going to go, goddamn Riz Media, they're attacking it. Like, no one's going to say that. We're going to be like, thank God they uncovered this corruption. So that's one thing. The second piece, though, that might be of relevance is around this idea of political engagement. Like I said, I remember 5-6 years ago when all of these things were popping up. The real effort was NAR is a very powerful political lobby organization. What NAR is lobbying for is something that is of interest and good for, like, all Americans. Why can't we get homeowners invested in property rights? Why we can get homeowners invested in some of these issues the way that gun owners are? Do you know what I mean? Like, so if there's some massive issue, property taxes going, through the roof or whatever, right? Some local zoning regulation that's going to really deprive homeowners of their property rights. Why does it have to be 200 realtors who show up to that city council meeting? Why can't it be 2,000 homeowners showing up to that meeting? So the impetus, the motivation, all of that was great. And I've worked on projects like this. Back in the day, I used to have this called neighborhood advocates and all this stuff. What I'm learning is realtors, let me stop sharing this. Like, I do think it'd be worthwhile, especially going forward, for realtors to really rethink what political activism means, right? In the realtor world, political activism has forever meant bribery, legal bribery, meaning money, PACs, APOA, NAR, Tree PAC, right? It was just campaign contributors, legalized bribery. Okay? Whereas I've always felt that realtors are like pillars of their community, the good ones, right? They're the ones who kind of know everybody. They've been in the neighborhood for a long time. They have these connections. They have local relationships, right? They've probably sold houses for half of their town or whatever it is. Why aren't we using that grassroots power, tapping into that? APOA might be way more successful if it wasn't about campaign contribution or funneling money to PACs, but it was about getting realtors to organize their local communities. Do you see what I'm saying? Efforts were tried. It's a little bit, and I know they've all kind of failed, but hey, man, if you're going to go and spend $6 million, $10 million through APOA, how about you spend $10 million like training realtors to organize local communities? That's might have a much bigger payoff, much bigger impact.
I mean,
right?
I think these are smart people that do this, and I think they weigh all those options, and they've basically come up with the fact of like the best bang for your buck is to do it the way they're doing it, right? I mean, anything else is an anomaly, right?
To your point, they're professionals. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure, but then
if they thought it was going to be a more effective getting mobilizing realtors specifically, those individuals, man, they would be doing that. And I'm sure there's a wing out there that's part of it, but I don't think it's as successful as somebody walking into a congressman's office, unfortunately, like everybody else does, and says, here's $20,000 for your campaign. Will you listen to me for 5 minutes, right?
Maybe. And again, those guys are professionals. Maybe they know better. What I will say, though, is this. If you do that, then what ends up happening is the membership drives nothing. It's the bureaucracy that drives it all. Right? And that's what we're seeing. You talked about how do I become an insider to get paid $250,000 as a part-time consultant.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, the symbol there is it's no longer the organization. It's not the members. It's not the elected leaders. It's the bureaucracy. Right? The paid staff. It's the bureaucracy that runs realtors. I mean, that's just what it is. So if that's what we want, then that's what we're going to get, right? And when you have that, then we're going to have things like APOA. Because the reason why they haven't gone down that road, I think, is because if you do that, you don't control it, right? And realtors are obsessed with control. They're control freaks, right? Which is why we have so many of the problems that we have. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You all do that. The result of that, though, is going to be stories like this one in the New York Times. That's just going to come and hit you and divide you and embarrass you and, potentially try and alienate you, divide you out.
Yeah, I think it's harder probably to find organizations that are not hit than that are hit, right? I mean, like you said, the National Rifle Association. I mean, there's always you always read about some association where somebody was fiddling with somebody else or money mismanagement. I mean, it is part of the rubric. It's part of the game that people make those decisions of still why to do that, right?
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I just think the thing that's remarkable about it, though, is NRA and NAR both have this problem. When they get hammered like this, man, their PR response is so bad. So bad. So weak. And I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if traditional PR playbook, actually, I'm fairly convinced that the traditional PR playbook no longer works, no longer matters.
My guess would be it's roots in legal. If NAR came out there and really said, "I'm sorry, we're sorry that this happened," that could bite them 2 ways till Sunday legally, right?
I'm not saying come out and say root to legal. I'm saying something like this happens, like Nike or Kevin Sears should probably just come on like this podcast or go on Dugan's podcast, right? And spend an hour just going through all this and having an open conversation instead of what we saw, right? Your typical corporate speak, like bullet points and then, blah, 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 blah. Like, nobody's reading that, dude. Nobody cares. Damage is done, right? That's what I mean. Like, it's more of a technique thing, right? That I've been criticizing, not just NAR, but like literally everyone in our industry. Like, I'm just telling you, at this point in time, you're much better off just going on some 3-hour podcast and just letting it out, just laying it down. And to your point, at that point, this is to say Kevin Sears went on Lamakia's show, and he said all kinds of shit that's really going to harm the association. But instead, if he was just like, listen, yeah, this is what we did, APOA, this is the way the game's played, y'all. Right? This is what we got to do. So stay out of the kitchen if you don't want to know, how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
That would actually resonate more than this press release thing that they did. That's what I'm getting at, right? And I think if there's a takeaway for our listeners are in leadership positions. If there's a scandal, man, you're way better off just like doing a 60-minute like Ask Me Anything town hall, recording it. Honestly, the president of Las Vegas Realtors, who's $400,000, really? Like, that's a lot of fucking money.
Wow.
You are way better off just doing a town hall meeting, recording it, and be like, come at me, ask me whatever you want, and then I'll just kind of like lay it out for you. Right? That's a way better PR approach than like clamping down, shutting up, getting a PR consultant to write some press release, and then some setting the record straight bullshit. Like, nobody believes that. Like, come on, guys. So that's what I mean. Like, it's a new time. Seriously, I get it. You don't want to come on this. Go on like Dwiggen's podcast. Go on some mainstream thing.
He's had Nakia. He's had some others.
Yeah.
On his podcast.
Yeah.
So.
Because, he handles them softly and gently. Which we don't. You do. You're way better at that.
Moi?
Yeah. Go on listing bits. Go on Greg's listing bits and spend an hour just kind of talking it out. Right? No, that's just like actual practical advice I'm offering NAR to everybody. If a scandal should pop, your response should not be some goddamn bullet point thing that nobody reads or cares about. Go on listing bits to Greg and just say, here's what happened. Here's how things are. Right? Because Greg's an honest player. He'll ask you a question and you could explain it and do all that. That would be my thought. So,
come on aboard.
Exactly. I understand. You don't want to step into the arena with his relations because I totally get it. Go on, Greg's podcast. Go on Dwiggen's podcast, So do that. Anyway, I don't know. I'd love to hear what people have to say about that. But as far as this story, look, my takeaway is the New York Times really hates NAR.
Yeah, it seems.
We knew that.
As much as they deny that seems to be the case.
Yeah, we knew that. I suspect that it's connected to the fact that the Department of Justice is going to try and destroy NAR. Oh, well, it is what it is. And then, oh my gosh, the top 5 lobby in Washington, D.C. did some, potentially shady, potentially embarrassing stuff in the background in order to funnel money to establishment, organizations. That's not shocking. Like, okay. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, the next 2 episodes can be quite fun.
Yeah, so we have kind of year-end wrap-up. We have predictions for next year, so look at that. And then we'll have some announcements about some changes to the Industry Relations podcast starting next year.
Yep.
That I think people are going to get excited about. So, yeah, no, it's
you don't even got to wait that long. We'll just tell you. We want to incorporate more live streams because, where we could get to have a lot more going back and forth with audience members, which I think will be cool.
I think that the way, but we appreciate that the live streams we're doing now has been, okay, we're going live in 15 minutes, and that doesn't work for people. So what we're trying to do is possibly like the second Friday of every month will be a live stream.
Yeah,
right. So that people can kind of, if they want to participate, they can put it in their schedule.
Yep.
So that's kind of what we're thinking for next year, and we're getting geared up for that. That's the reason for the new platform today.
Yep.
And although you probably won't even see that when this video is created, but excited about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you all next time.